we have David Ridley and Stephen Williams, who will reflect on what they just heard from the previous panel of speakers, and then how culture influences their own learning and professional work. I'll first introduce David. So David Ridley began as Edmonton Heritage Council staff in April 2009, working with the Heritage Council's steering committee before the official founding of the council in November 2009, and as its executive director. His past work in heritage has been as a cultural community researcher with the Royal Alberta Museum and director of research with the Heritage Community Foundation. He has worked on several projects documenting, interpreting, and writing about local cultural life and religious tradition in a number of Alberta communities. He has served as a volunteer director with Historical Rundle's Mission Society, the United Church Historical Society, and is currently active with his neighborhood's community league. Over to you, David.
Thanks very much, Jeff, and thanks to all of you for your sort of engaging thought and comments. Really remarkable. You know, first of all, from a perspective of, if you like, heritage practice, I'm really pleased that I can listen to this kind of conversation and engage with it from, you know, what the kind of work we do isn't necessarily, or it's certainly not broadly viewed as artistic practice. But I know some of you on the call have actually, we've had opportunity to work with you and support, and I appreciate that. You know, I often think heritage practice is at its best, not when it's concerned with some of the things that people think in terms of historical methodology, you know, such as factual and strict preservation practices, but when it reflects, when it is poetic to some degree in how it's presented, when it engages with meaning, when it engages with memory. And so this is what artists and the artistic community do well. And I'd say when the heritage community does its work well, it also has a strong connection to that. And that's important for me because I did not come into the work that I'm doing necessarily through as a historian or an archivist or some of those things that are you know, a material culture collection approach. And so I bring a little bit more of that lens to this work. I think overall, I mean, there was many things I was hearing, and so I'm sort of skating here to do anything that's a reasonable synthesis, and I actually don't think I can do that. But what really strikes me is the range of artistic perspectives, experiences, and as it's rooted in culture that we're able to have a conversation about in this city. And that's very rich and helpful. You know, my concern is that in an organization like the Heritage Council, and I'll let Stephen, you know, when we introduce him, speak on behalf of some of this insights for the Arts Council, is that we find ways to help sustain those and build those. In other words, we're not looking for some, you know, choice between, you know, this is something we can support and this is something we can. And so certainly as people were speaking, the vitality of the work that's going on is I think exceptional and exciting. And I would view it as a challenge to an organization like mine is how do we continue to just sustain that? Not only for the artists or the heritage practitioners or the particular communities from where they draw their cultural traditions, but then how do we get that out and share it more widely with Edmontonians and the region and the province and the country and internationally. So that's an interesting challenge in this, but that the work is going on is really the key thing, I think now. So I'll leave it there, Jeff, for now. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, David. Yeah, that's a really good point about the challenges, especially coming from your perspective. It's great having folks kind of at that higher systemic level trying to help project and preserve, but also amplify these voices and experiences as well. So thank you for sharing your thoughts. Next, I would like to introduce Stephen. Stephen Williams is the Director of Grants, Awards, and Support Programs at the Edmonton Arts Council. He joined the Arts Council in 2010 after holding positions with the Government of Alberta and the Canada Council for the Arts. Before moving into those roles, he was an active trumpet player, stage manager, community band conductor, and music educator in Northern Alberta. Stephen holds a music diploma from Grant MacEwan College, now MacEwan University, a Bachelor of Music degree from the University of Alberta, and recently completed a master's degree in public administration from Dalhousie University. He lives in Edmonton with his family, including his cats, Mary and Pippin. Stephen.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm sort of struggling with how to respond to some of these thoughts, and I think I was really quite inspired by something Elsa said earlier about how, of course, her cultural background brings forth in her artwork, but it's not the only thing, and neither should it be the only thing. It is but one thing that contributes to the work that she does and what inspires her. And I think one of the things that I've observed over the last 6 months is that we're in this state of flux where all of those influences, as painfully challenging as the time has been for many of us, the ability to use that flux to bring forward those different influences in different ways is some of what I'm observing. Historically, in the past, let's say 5 years, there's always been this kind of approach in some way to arts practice where somehow there was a right answer. And I don't know if this is an Edmontonian specific sort of thing or just because of the position that I find myself in, that folks always wanted to talk about what was sort of the best practice or the right way or the and I think this grows from our educational system, where certainly until at least mid undergraduate education, moving forward is based on having some kind of right answer. There's a teacher who knows the answer. Your job is to give the answer. If you give the right answer, it opens the next door to the next thing. And the idea that anybody at this point knows what the right answer is, I think that the pandemic situation has thrown that kind of, not that I ever thought that it was right for artistic practice in the first place, but it's kind of thrown even the illusion that there's somehow a right answer right out the window. And for us at the Edmonton Arts Council, I mean, this really puts pressure on us to make sure that we are not somehow pretending that we have the right answer, but that we walk together forward with the community, with practitioners, with folks who run arts organizations, and that we try and move forward together as a community, walk forward together as a community, and not in a seeking sort of way, as opposed to perpetuating the illusion that somehow we have a right answer that everybody needs to conform to. So I don't know if that's coherent in response to the prompt provided, but I mean, I'll go so far as to say that I think we're really committed to that, and I think it's going to be really hard. I think that's going to be a really, really challenging thing to figure out, not only in terms of figuring out in the first place and moving forward together with everybody, but also in consciously trying to let go of that idea that we are a keeper of the right answer, but rather that we all need to be coordinated seekers of an answer.
Amazing. Very good point, Stephen. COVID has really challenged us all to be comfortable with the uncomfortable ambiguity of life right now, and it is such an interesting opportunity that really comes in such rare moments in history, that we are able to have these moments of reflection and to see what we can do as a collective and community moving forward. I'm wondering if either of you two, thank you for your thoughts, if you have any additional things you would like to add to the discussion so far.
Well, that's not a little question at all, is it?
No. Any other thoughts that maybe have sparked from inspiration from what you've just spoken to, or anything like that?
I forever find the listening to the practitioners, particularly the last panel, inspiring in a way to try and make sure that we, as a community, and in the position that I hold in that community, that we try very hard to somehow do the right thing, whatever that ends up being. It's I think I'm kind of at a loss for inspiring words that would just tread on the words that were said before.
I would, thanks for that. Yeah, Stephen, I think from the kind of work we do, I think just the way Stephen's framed it in terms of that sort of co-seeking, and that there isn't an answer, is, or that there aren't these binary approaches or binary responses to these things. That's really important. We're working on an event that's really, we call our e-camping trip, that's really about sort of the identities of Edmonton. And that's interesting. I think that's really an opportunity, because we are a place where that identity hasn't been collectively formed. Although I would say at our, what I'm very excited about, and I think it's so important, is that we at our heart, we actually we're in an Indigenous place, and a place of that kind of meeting. And that's not about appropriating that identity, but that the recognition of it, I think, is really the kind of foundation for doing all kinds of other good work, our relationship and understanding relationship to that through treaty, through community connection. I think that's going to be, and has been, and will continue to be, such an important part of how we grow together.
Yeah, thank you both for your thoughts and your perspectives. Yeah, I think these are great things to have all of us consider moving forward. How do we still continue building with our relationships and with our meaningful relationship moving forward as a collective, as a community, both through our heritage and through the arts. So thank you both for your perspective. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.